Greetings, students, and welcome to Tuesday and Wednesday's edition of Distant Learning with Mr. Wong. Today's lesson for standard are histograms, and the accompanying homework is on page 480, questions 1 and 2. Let's proceed by first taking a look at the review of how to find mean, median, and create box plots. These are the necessary steps to be able to accomplish those tasks. Pause the video now so you may be able to take some notes as needed to remind yourself how to complete these activities. Let's move on. Join us on page 477. I would advise you that you get your book out, notebook, and as well as a writing instrument. I have received homework with pens being written with. However, I do encourage you to use pencils. Let's take a look at this example. Grouping data in intervals. The members of a high school basketball team practice free throws. Each player attempts 50 free throws. The number of free throws made by each player is listed below. 25, 29, 29, 30, 33, 34, 35, 35, 36, 39, 42, and 44. Let's take a look and see what it would look like as a dot plot. Let's plot these values of the basketball players' free throw numbers. We see a 25, 29, another 29, 30, 33, 34, 35, 35, 36, 39, 42, and 44. On the dot plot, I want you to circle the dots that are in each interval of the frequency table below. Then complete the frequency table. That means for all the dots that are within the 20 to 29 range, count them, and how many do you count? Write that number there. For all the dots in the 30 through 39 section, go ahead and count how many dots there are and write that number in this part of the table. Do the same thing for the 40 to 49 interval. Have you finished writing and counting? Let's take a look and see if your counting matches the correct answers. We have 3 in the first interval, 7 in the next, and finally 2 in the last. Do you remember how we described dot plots with the spread of the data, the center, outliers, and gaps? Well, take a look at how spread apart these free throw attempts are. We really can't make a valid description because all the values are quite spread out. So we're going to try and create another form of diagram to help us see how well these data groups are organized. Let's continue. Let's take some of the things we learned last week and the beginning of this week in yesterday's lesson and see if we can answer these questions and analyze the data. How are the data collected? How many values are there? What are the mean, median, range, and interquartile range of the data? Remember, mean just means the average. Median is the middle value. Range is the distance from the greatest and least value. And the IQR, interquartile range, is the range of the inside quartiles, the lower and upper quartile. If you need to review your notes at any time, please do so before attempting this question. At this time, please pause the video now to accomplish this task, and then resume once you've completed the task. Welcome back. Let's check to see if your answer and responses are correct. First question, how were the data collected? Simply by counting the 12 basketball players' free throws that were successful. How many data values are there? Well, since there's 12 basketball players, there are 12 values. What is the mean? To do this, we need to look at the original list of values. Remember, we add all these values up and divide by how many values there are on this list. In this case, we would divide by 12. Our mean would be 411, the total, divided by 12, and we would get 34.25. Remember, it's recommended that you use calculators to help you with these calculations. What is the median? If you recall that these numbers are already in order from least to greatest, all we have to do is find the middle number. Remember, there are 12 values in this data list. That means there will be 6 on one half and 6 on the other. The middle is somewhere between 34 and 35. By adding these two values together and dividing by 2, we get a mean of 34.5. What about the range? Well, it's the distance from the greatest value to the least value. In this case, it's 44 minus 25. We get 19. and our interquartile range is needed to find the left and the right medians of those halves. The left median is the lower quartile, and the right median is the upper quartile. Subtract those to find the difference as well. 37.5 minus 29.5 is an interquartile range of 8. Did you get those answers correct when you tried? Great! Let's continue on to the reflection questions on page 478. Could you use the dot plot to find the mean and median of the data? Could I use the frequency table? Why or why not? To answer this question, we'll have to look back at the dot plot as well as the frequency table. From the dot plot, yes, we can absolutely find the mean and median because we know what the real values are based on the dots. However, in the frequency table, we have 3 values in the 20 to 29 interval. These 3 numbers could be anything. If we didn't have the dot plot, we wouldn't know what those values are. It's very similar to seeing that you have an A in one class or a B in another class. What's your actual percentage? Or what are your grades? To answer this question, yes and no. The dot plot shows all the data values so you can find the median and calculate the mean. The frequency table groups data into intervals so you can't see the individual values. So how do you find the number of data values in a set from a dot plot? What do? How can you find the number of data values from a frequency table? Well, since there should be 12 players, there should be 12 dots. Since there's frequency, or how frequent it happened, just add up the frequencies for your total. In both cases, we should get 12. Now, the dot plot is not as useful for numbers that are too widespread. As previously mentioned, there's too many gaps and, well, not a center or a correct spread of the data. So we use these intervals to make histograms. A histogram is a type of bar graph whose bars represent the frequencies of numerical data within intervals. Let's take a look at example 1 on page 478. This is the example you see in your book, with all the work completed. Let's do it step by step. Step 1 is to make a frequency table from the data in the list. Now, in order to do this, we have to make sure that we count up by correct intervals. In this case, you want to make equal-sized intervals of 4. Meaning, if the first interval is from 1 to 4, there are 4 possible values: 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right after 4 picks up with 5, and the next set of 4 is 8. Right after 8 is 9, and the next set of 4, 4, 8, 12, and it continues. After 12 is 13, and again continuing with the pattern of 4s, 16. From this list alone, we can tell that there are 8 values that are either between 1 through 4, 4 values between 5 and 8, 2 values 9 through 12, and 1 value in the 13 through 16 group, which is that 14 right there. Step 2 is to make the histogram. Again, this is like a bar graph. The intervals are shown along the x-axis, and the vertical axis shows the frequencies. For each interval, draw a bar to show the number of days in that interval. The bar should have equal widths, so they should be touching, but not overlapping. In this case, we have 8 frequency for our 1 through 4, 4 frequency for our 5 through 8 group, 2 frequency for 9 to 12, and 1 frequency for our 13 to 16 interval. Pause the video now to take this all in. Think about some questions you might have and write them in your notebook and email them to me once this lesson is concluded. Let's continue. Let's answer the reflection question on page 249. What if? Suppose the bird watcher continues observation for 3 more days and collects these data values. He saw 5 birds, he saw 18 birds, and then he saw 2. How could you change the histogram to include the data? I mean, it's very easy for this 5. Where will we put it? It's also very easy for this 2. It would make the green bar of the histogram increase by 1. It would make the blue bar of the interval 1 through 4 also increase by 1. But where should I put the 18? That's right, we need a new interval 17 through 20. And that will have an interval frequency of 1. We have to build a new bar for a new data value. Remember, the biggest part of creating a frequency table and a histogram accurately is to make sure that all the intervals are spaced evenly. Remember, intervals 1 through 4, that 4 at the end dictates the pattern. Right after 4 comes a 5, and the next 4 is 8. The next 4 is 12, 16, and 20. Make sure that there are no gaps so that any number that might appear in an observation can be included in the histogram. Now it's your turn. Kim has started rating each movie she sees using a scale from 1 to 10 on an online site. Here are her ratings so far: 6, 9, 8, 5, 7, 4, 8, 8, 3, 7, 8, 7, 5, 1, and 10. I want you to make a histogram of the data. The first thing we should do, though, is, you guessed it, create a frequency table. At this time, go ahead and pause the video to make a frequency table and make the histogram, bar graph, and then resume the video once you've completed the task. Welcome back. Let's check your frequency table and the histogram you created from that value. We should have one value in the 1 and 2s, 2 values 3 and 4, 3 values 5 and 6, 7 with ratings of 7 and 8, and 2 other ratings of 9 and 10. Your histogram should have heights of each bar, 5 bars to be exact, with the frequency to match that height. Does your frequency table and histogram match this one? You did a great job. Now let us analyze and interpret histograms. By grouping data in intervals, a histogram gives us a picture of the distribution of a data set. Using the example from number 1, what are some conclusions you can make about the data from the shape of distribution? Remember, this is the amount of birds seen at a feeder on a particular day. The highest bar is for interval 1 through 4, which means that more than half of the days, remember there were 15 days observed, and this is 8. 8 out of 15 is more than half the days observed that there are at least 1 to 4 birds. The bars decreased in height from left to right, showing that it's more likely for a bird watcher to see a small number of birds rather than a large number of birds on any given day. Make your assumptions and descriptions observations from the histogram of this Kim's rating. Very similarly, there were 14 observations made. Can you make some similar conclusions? That's right. Half of Kim's ratings were between 7 and 8. She gave 9 and 10 ratings to 2 movies out of 15. This should be good because we really reserve the best scores for some of the best movies out there. Let's proceed to take a look at what the homework looks like on page 480. Questions 1 and 2. Remember, you can rewind the video at any point to review some of the concepts regarding frequency tables and histograms. For question 1, we want to take these values and create a frequency table. Remember, the intervals in the frequency table must be the exact amount. How many numbers do you think are between 0 and 9? Let's count on our fingers. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 10 values. Now see how this 9 is the end number? What number do you think comes right after 9? You guessed it, 10. And we still need a 9 in the ones place for the number that follows. The next interval will be 10 through 19. And then 20 through 29. 30 through 39. This will be a little help for you to figure out this frequency. Then for number 2, the frequency table is already made for you. You just have to do the tallies and make the histogram. Again, homework tonight is page 480, questions 1 and 2. I'll see you in the next video. Email me with any questions you have, and do remember that you can rewind this at any time to help you accomplish the homework.